The crystalline towers of Drakenheim gleamed under 3 suns, casting rainbow shadows across the massive city where dragons made their homes. In the highest tower of the northern district, 5 eggs had hatched during the last cold season. 4 of the hatchlings had emerged large and strong, their scales already showing the deep crimson and gold that marked their family's prestigious bloodline. The 5th egg had taken longer to crack open, and when it finally did, the hatchling inside was barely half the size of his siblings. They named him Ash because his scales were the color of smoke rather than fire. From his very first day, Ash understood he was different. His mother would feed his brothers and sisters first, giving them the choicest cuts of meat and the warmest spots near her body. By the time she turned her attention to Ash, there was little left. His father rarely looked at him at all. When he did, his eyes held disappointment. "The runt," his father would say, as if that explained everything. "He will probably never fly properly. His flame will be weak." Ash tried so hard to prove them wrong. He practiced flapping his small wings until they ached. He attempted to breathe fire like his siblings, but only managed small puffs of smoke. His brothers and sisters grew faster and stronger with each passing week while Ash remained small. They learned to glide from the upper chambers to the lower ones. They began their hunting lessons. They were praised and celebrated. Ash was forgotten. His parents moved his sleeping area from the warm family nest to a lower chamber where the heating crystals barely worked. They said it would make him tougher. Ash shivered through the nights, curled into the smallest ball he could manage trying to keep warm. He told himself that dragons were supposed to be strong. Dragons did not cry. But sometimes, alone in the dark, tears slid down his scaled cheeks anyway. The hunger was the worst part. Ash's parents fed his siblings regular meals, but they often forgot about him entirely. He would wait in his cold chamber, his stomach cramping with emptiness, hoping someone would remember. Sometimes a whole day would pass before anyone brought him food. When they did, it was always scraps. Bits too small or too burnt for the others to want. Ash grew weaker. His scales lost their shine. His wings trembled when he tried to spread them. One day, another young dragon named Flint came to the lower chambers. Flint was from a different family, but he was strong and well-fed. He saw Ash's collection of small treasures that every hatchling received at birth. There was a soft blanket woven from thermal fibers, 3 small toys carved from glowstone, and a medallion with Ash's hatching date engraved on it. "I am hungry," Ash whispered to Flint. "Do you have any food you do not want?" Flint looked at the blanket. "I will trade you half my meal portion for that blanket." Ash hesitated. The blanket was the only warm thing he owned. But his stomach hurt so much and he felt dizzy from not eating. He agreed to the trade. The half portion of food lasted only a day. Then the hunger returned, sharper than before. Ash looked at his remaining belongings. He traded 1 glowstone toy for another small meal. Then another toy for a few scraps. Each time he told himself it was worth it. He needed to survive. Other young dragons began to hear about Ash's trades. They would visit his chamber with small amounts of food, looking at what he had left. Ash's collection of birth treasures grew smaller and smaller. He traded away his naming day medallion for a meal that was mostly bones. He wrapped himself in his own wings at night since the blanket was gone. Finally, Ash had only one item remaining. It was a musical crystal, a special toy that played soft lullabies when touched. His mother had given it to him on his hatching day back when she still smiled at him sometimes. It was the last piece of evidence that he had once been wanted even a little bit. Ash held the crystal in his small claws and felt his chest tighten. He had not eaten in 2 days. His parents had not visited his chamber in nearly a week. He was so hungry that he could barely stand. The crystal caught the light and played a few notes of a gentle song, the kind that mothers hum to their babies. A young dragon named Cinder came to his chamber. "I have half a meal portion. What will you trade?" Ash looked at the crystal. Then at the food. His whole body shook. "This," he whispered, holding up the musical crystal. Cinder's eyes widened. "That is a hatching gift. Are you certain?" Ash was not certain of anything anymore except that he needed to eat or he would die. He nodded. The trade was made. Ash ate the half portion slowly, trying to make it last. When it was gone, he looked around his empty chamber. No blanket. No toys. No medallion. No crystal. Nothing left of the hatchling who had cracked out of his egg full of hope. He curled up in the corner where the heating crystal gave off the tiniest bit of warmth. The stone floor was cold against his scales. His stomach still ached despite the food. And for the first time, Ash wondered if his parents were right. Maybe runts like him were not meant to survive. That was when Ben Foster first saw him. Ben worked as a maintenance engineer in the Dragon District. Humans were allowed in Drakenheim to handle the technical systems that kept the towers running, but they were considered lower-class workers. Dragons rarely spoke to them directly. Ben spent his days checking environmental controls, replacing worn heating crystals, and fixing ventilation systems. It was quiet work and he preferred it that way. He had been replacing a heating unit in the lower levels of the northern tower when he heard a small sound near the disposal units. Ben turned and saw a tiny dragon hatchling, barely bigger than a large dog, digging through the waste containers. The little dragon was clearly looking for food scraps. Ben stopped working and watched. The hatchling was painfully thin. His scales were dull gray and his wings hung limply at his sides. He pulled out a small piece of discarded meat, sniffed it carefully, then ate it despite the fact that it was clearly spoiled. Something in Ben's chest twisted painfully. He had seen neglect before in his years working among different species, but there was something especially heartbreaking about watching a child go hungry. This was a dragon hatchling, a creature from one of the most powerful and wealthy species in the known galaxy, and yet here he was eating garbage to survive. Ben knew he should not interfere. Humans were warned constantly about respecting dragon family structures. Getting involved could cost him his job or worse. But Ben had been a father once. His own son had died in an accident 3 years ago, and the grief still lived in his bones. He recognized the look in that little dragon's eyes. It was the look of a child who had given up hope that anyone cared. The hatchling finished the spoiled meat and curled up right there beside the disposal unit. His small body shook, whether from cold or hunger or loneliness Ben could not tell. Probably all three. Ben made a decision. He quietly finished his work on the heating unit, then left the tower. But he did not forget what he had seen. That night, lying in his small quarters in the human district, he could not stop thinking about those dull gray scales and those empty eyes. The next morning, Ben packed an extra nutrient bar in his work bag. When his maintenance route took him back to the northern tower's lower levels, he looked around carefully. The little dragon was there again, searching through the disposal units with the desperate patience of someone who knew this might be his only option for food. Ben set the nutrient bar down on a nearby ledge where the hatchling would find it. Then he walked away before he could be seen. He told himself it was just one meal. One small act of kindness. It would not change anything. But Ben Foster had no idea that this one small act would change everything, for both him and the forgotten hatchling named Ash. The nutrient bar disappeared within an hour. Ben checked on his way back through the lower levels and found the ledge empty. He felt a small sense of relief. At least the little hatchling had found it and eaten something with actual nutrition instead of spoiled garbage. The next day, Ben left 2 nutrient bars and a small thermal pack that would stay warm for several hours. He placed them in the same spot and went about his maintenance work. When he passed by later, both items were gone. This time, he caught a glimpse of gray scales disappearing around a corner. The hatchling was watching him. Ben continued this routine for 3 days. Each morning he left food and something useful. A blanket. A light orb that would provide warmth and glow softly. A container of clean water. He never stayed to watch, giving the little dragon space to take the items without fear. But Ben could tell they were being accepted because they always disappeared. On the 4th day, Ben decided to try something different. He arrived at the lower level earlier than usual, during his scheduled break. He placed a full meal pack on the ledge, then instead of leaving he sat down on the floor about 10 feet away. He pulled out his data pad and pretended to read work reports, acting as if he just happened to be resting in that spot. For a long time nothing happened. Ben kept his eyes on his data pad, but he was aware of every sound. The hum of the ventilation system. The distant rumble of dragons moving through the upper levels. And then, very quietly, the soft click of small claws on stone. Ben did not look up. He heard the careful approach, then a pause. The little dragon was there, close enough that Ben could hear his breathing. It was faster than it should be, nervous and uncertain. Ben remained still. After what felt like forever, he heard the sound of the meal pack being picked up. Then rapid footsteps retreating. Ben let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Progress. The hatchling was getting used to his presence. The next day Ben sat in the same spot. This time he brought 2 meal packs. He placed one on the ledge as usual but kept the other one beside him. When the little dragon appeared, creeping forward with his belly low to the ground, Ben still did not look directly at him. But he spoke, keeping his voice soft and calm. "Hello there. I brought extra today if you are still hungry." The hatchling froze. Ben could see him from the corner of his eye, a small gray shape trembling with indecision. Flight instinct warred with desperate hunger. Ben held very still. "I will just leave it here, Ben said quietly. He placed the second meal pack on the floor between them, then went back to looking at his data pad. Minutes passed. Then, moving so carefully it seemed like slow motion, the little dragon crept forward. He snatched the meal pack from the ledge first, retreating with it to a safe distance. Then he ate it quickly, his eyes never leaving Ben. When it was gone, the hatchling stared at the second pack on the floor. Ben pretended not to notice. He scrolled through his data pad, his posture relaxed and non-threatening. The little dragon inched forward. Stopped. Inched forward again. Finally, moving faster now, he grabbed the second pack and retreated to his corner. This became their new routine. Ben would sit and leave food closer to himself each day. The hatchling would approach, always cautious, always ready to run. But the distance between them grew smaller. On the 7th day, the little dragon did not immediately run away after taking the food. He stayed in his corner and ate while Ben was still there, watching him with large golden eyes that held equal parts fear and curiosity. Ben smiled but did not move toward him. "You are very brave," Ben said softly. "It takes courage to trust." The hatchling tilted his head, processing the words. He finished eating, then surprised Ben by speaking for the first time. His voice was small and hoarse as if he did not use it often. "What is your name?" "Ben. Ben Foster." "What is yours?" "Ash." The hatchling hugged his wings close to his body. "I am Ash." "It is nice to meet you, Ash." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ash asked the question that had clearly been bothering him. "Why do you bring me food?" "Because you need it," Ben replied simply. "But I am nothing. I am the runt. My family does not want me." Ash's voice cracked slightly. "I have nothing to give you. I already traded everything away." Ben felt his heart break a little more. He set down his data pad and turned to face Ash properly. The little dragon tensed, ready to flee, but Ben kept his movements slow and gentle. "You do not need to give me anything, Ash. You do not need to trade or earn kindness. Sometimes help is just help." Ash shook his head, confused. "But that is not how things work. Everything costs something." "I learned that." "Who taught you that?" "Everyone. When I was hungry I had to trade my things for food. My blanket. My toys. Everything I owned. That is how it works." Ben clenched his jaw, fighting down anger at the situation this child had been forced into. He took a slow breath before responding. "That should not have happened to you. You are a young one. You should be cared for, not forced to bargain for basic needs. But I am weak. I am small. Dragons are supposed to be strong." "You are strong," Ben said firmly. "You survived when you were alone and hungry and scared. That takes incredible strength. Being small does not make you weak, Ash. And being weak does not mean you deserve to suffer." Ash stared at him with those wide golden eyes. He looked like he wanted to believe Ben's words but could not quite manage it. Too much neglect had taught him otherwise. Ben reached into his bag slowly, making sure Ash could see everything he was doing. He pulled out a soft thermal blanket, the kind designed for small creatures who needed warmth. "I brought this for you. No trade needed. It is a gift." "A gift?" Ash whispered the word like it was foreign. "Yes. You take it because I want you to have it. Because you deserve to be warm. That is all." Ash crept forward, moving closer to Ben than he ever had before. He reached out one small claw and touched the blanket, then pulled back as if expecting it to be snatched away. When nothing happened, he touched it again. The fabric was soft and already radiating gentle heat. "I do not understand," Ash said, his voice shaking. "Why would a human help me? Dragons say humans are lower workers. They say we should not even talk to you." Ben smiled sadly. "I know what they say. But I also know what it looks like when a child is hurting. I was a father once, Ash. My son died 3 years ago. He was young like you. And I could not save him." Ash's expression shifted to something like understanding. "You are sad." "Yes, very sad. And when I saw you digging through the garbage, hungry and alone, I thought about my boy. I thought about how wrong it is for any child to suffer when adults could help." Ben's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I cannot bring my son back. But maybe I can make sure you do not go hungry anymore. Maybe that is enough." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The ventilation system hummed. Somewhere above them, dragons roared and laughed. Down here in the forgotten lower levels, a human and a dragon hatchling sat together in the dim light. Finally, Ash moved. He picked up the thermal blanket and wrapped it around his small body. The warmth soaked into his scales immediately, and he made a small sound of relief. Then he looked at Ben with something new in his eyes. Not just curiosity or confusion. Hope. Fragile and uncertain, but there. Ben, Ash said quietly. Will you come back tomorrow? Yes, Ben promised. I will come back every day. Even though I have nothing to give you? Ben knelt down, making himself smaller and less intimidating. He met Ash's eyes and spoke with absolute sincerity. You do not need to give me anything, Ash. Not now, not ever. Sometimes kindness needs no reason except that someone is hurting. And I can see that you have been hurting for a very long time. A single tear rolled down Ash's scaled cheek. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Ben stood slowly. I have to finish my work now, but I will be back tomorrow with more food. And Ash, you can keep the blanket. It is yours. As Ben walked away, he glanced back once. Ash was curled up in his corner, wrapped in the thermal blanket, watching Ben leave. For the first time since Ben had discovered him, the little dragon did not look quite so alone. Ben kept his promise. Every day during his maintenance rounds he came to the lower levels with food, supplies, and most importantly time for Ash. What started as simple meals grew into something much more meaningful. Ben began to notice how little the hatchling knew about basic survival skills that his parents should have taught him. Ash, when was the last time you cleaned your scales properly? Ben asked one afternoon, noticing how dull and flaky they looked. Ash tilted his head in confusion. Clean them? I do not know how. Ben felt a flash of anger at the neglect, but he pushed it down. Getting angry would not help Ash now. All right, let me teach you. Dragon scales need regular care to stay healthy and strong. He showed Ash how to use a soft brush to remove dead scales and dirt. He brought special oils that helped scales shine and stay flexible. The first time Ash saw his reflection after a proper cleaning, his eyes went wide with wonder. His scales gleamed like polished silver instead of dull ash. I look different, Ash whispered, turning to see himself from different angles. You look healthy, Ben corrected gently. This is how you are supposed to look. Ben also noticed that Ash's wings were weak from lack of use and poor nutrition. Your parents should be teaching you wing exercises, he said. Let me show you some basic stretches. Every day they practiced together. Ben would guide Ash through movements that strengthened the wing muscles. At first, Ash could barely hold his wings extended for more than a few seconds. But with proper food and regular practice he grew stronger. After 2 weeks, Ash managed to glide from a low ledge to the floor, and his delighted laugh echoed through the lower chamber. It was the first time Ben had heard him laugh. The sound was pure joy, unguarded and bright. Ben found himself grinning widely. Did you see? Did you see, Ben? I glided. Ash bounced excitedly, his tail swishing back and forth. I saw. That was excellent. Try it again. They spent an hour practicing glides, and Ash's confidence grew with each attempt. When he finally wore himself out, he flopped down next to Ben, panting but happy. His eyes sparkled with an energy that had not been there before. I never knew I could do that, Ash said softly. I thought I was too weak. You were never too weak. You just needed proper food and someone to teach you. Ben handed him a nutrient bar. You are learning fast, Ash. I am proud of you. Those simple words made Ash's eyes go glossy with tears. No one ever said they were proud of me before. Ben's heart ached. He reached out slowly, giving Ash time to pull away if he wanted. When the hatchling did not move, Ben gently placed his hand on Ash's head, stroking the smooth scales. Well, I am saying it now. And I will keep saying it because it is true. As the days turned into weeks, their bond deepened. Ben taught Ash how to regulate his body temperature better, how to recognize which foods were safe to eat, how to keep himself clean and healthy. Simple things that any parent should teach their child. Things Ash had never learned because no one had cared enough to show him. Ash began to change. He held himself with more confidence. His scales grew shiny and strong. He smiled often and laughed easily when they were together. The frightened, starving hatchling was becoming a bright, curious young dragon. One day, after a particularly successful practice session where Ash managed to glide across the entire chamber, the little dragon hugged Ben tightly around the waist. His voice was muffled against Ben's work uniform. Thank you, Papa Ben. Ben froze. What did you call me? Ash pulled back quickly, his eyes wide with worry. I'm sorry. I should not have said that. I know you are not really my papa. Sometimes I pretend. No, Ben said quickly, kneeling down to Ash's level. His own eyes were wet with tears. You can call me that, if you want to. I would be honored. Really? Ash's voice was small and hopeful. Really? You can call me Papa Ben whenever you like. Ash threw himself into Ben's arms again, and this time Ben hugged him back properly. The little dragon's body shook with happy sobs. I always wanted a papa who cared about me. I care about you very much, Ash. Very much. From that day forward, when they were alone, Ash called Ben Papa Ben with increasing confidence. And Ben found himself thinking of Ash as his child in all the ways that mattered. But their peaceful routine could not last forever. Ben was replacing a heating crystal in the mid-level corridors when a dragon administrator approached him. Her scales were deep purple, and her eyes were cold as she looked down at the human worker. "You are Ben Foster, correct?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Yes, ma'am." "Is there a problem with my work?" "Your work is adequate. However, we have received reports that you have been spending excessive time in the lower levels. Specifically, you have been interacting with a hatchling from the northern tower." Ben's stomach dropped, but he kept his expression neutral. "I sometimes see a young dragon in that area, yes. You are overstepping boundaries, human. Dragon family structures are not your concern. You are here to maintain equipment, nothing more. I am instructing you to cease all contact with the hatchling immediately. With all respect, ma'am, that hatchling was starving. He was eating garbage to survive." The administrator's expression did not change. "How dragon families raise their young is not subject to human judgment. You will stop interfering or you will lose your work permit for this district. Do you understand?" Ben wanted to argue. He wanted to tell this cold-eyed dragon exactly what he thought of a society that let children starve. But he also knew that losing his work permit meant losing access to Ash entirely. He nodded stiffly. "I understand." "Good. This conversation is finished." She left, and Ben stood there with his hands clenched into fists. He knew what he should do. He should follow orders, keep his head down, and protect his job. But every time he thought about abandoning Ash, something fierce and protective rose up in his chest. That night, Ben went to the lower levels as usual. Ash was waiting for him, wrapped in his thermal blanket and playing with a small toy Ben had brought him the week before. "Papa Ben." Ash ran to him, his tail wagging. Then he stopped, seeing Ben's expression. "What is wrong?" Ben knelt down and pulled Ash into a hug. "They told me to stop coming to see you. The dragon authorities. They said I am interfering." Ash's whole body went rigid. "You are leaving me?" "No. Never. I'm not leaving you, Ash. I promise. But they will take away your job. Then they take it away. You are more important than any job." Ash buried his face against Ben's shoulder. "I do not want you to get in trouble because of me. Listen to me." Ben pulled back so he could look Ash in the eyes. "You are not a burden. You are not trouble. You are a child who deserves love and care. If the authorities have a problem with that, then the problem is with them, not with you. Do you understand?" Ash nodded, but his eyes were worried. Over the next week, Ben continued his visits despite the warning. He was more careful, varying his timing and watching for observers. But he refused to abandon Ash. The little dragon needed him, and Ben would not fail another child. Then Ash got sick. Ben arrived one evening to find Ash curled in a tight ball, shivering violently despite the thermal blanket. His breathing was labored and his scales felt hot to the touch. "Ash? Ash, talk to me. What hurts?" "Everything," Ash whimpered. "My stomach. My head. I feel bad, Papa Ben." Ben felt panic rising. This was more than just a cold. Ash needed medical attention. But dragon medical facilities would not treat a hatchling without parental consent, and Ash's parents had made it clear they did not care. Ben made a decision in that moment that he knew would change everything. "I am taking you to the human medical center. Hold on to me." "But humans cannot treat dragons," Ash protested weakly. "They can try. And trying is better than leaving you here to suffer." Ben carefully lifted Ash in his arms. The little dragon was far too light, even with the weight he had gained from regular meals. "Trust me, Ash. Please." "I trust you, Papa Ben." Ben carried Ash through the lower corridors and out of the dragon district. He took service tunnels that humans used, avoiding main pathways where they might be stopped. Ash grew heavier in his arms, or perhaps Ben's muscles were just tired. It did not matter. He kept walking. The human medical center was small, designed mainly for treating work injuries. When Ben pushed through the doors carrying a dragon hatchling, every head turned in shock. "I need help," Ben said firmly. "This child is very sick." A doctor named Sarah came forward, her eyes wide. "Ben, we cannot treat dragons. We do not have the training or the equipment." "Then we learn fast. Please, Sarah. He is burning up with fever. He needs help now." Sarah looked at Ash, who was trembling in Ben's arms, and her medical training overcame her hesitation. "Bring him to the examination room. Quickly." The human medical center had never treated a dragon before, but Dr. Sarah and her team did their best. They ran tests, administered fluids, and monitored Ash's vital signs throughout the night. Ben refused to leave his side, sitting in a chair next to the medical bed and holding Ash's small claw in his hand. By morning, Ash's fever had broken. He was weak but stable, breathing easier than he had the night before. Sarah approached Ben with a tablet full of test results. He was severely malnourished, she said quietly, anger edging into her voice. His body was already weak, which made him vulnerable to infection. Another few days without treatment and... She trailed off, not needing to finish the sentence. Ben felt sick. But he will recover? With proper care and nutrition, yes. He should make a full recovery. But Ben, this did not happen overnight. This hatchling has been neglected for a long time. I know. I have been trying to help him, but it was not enough. Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder. You saved his life by bringing him here. But you know there will be consequences. The dragon authorities will find out. She was right. Within hours, the medical center received a formal complaint. By afternoon, 2 dragon officials arrived demanding to see the hatchling. Ben stood between them and Ash's medical bed. You need to step aside, human, the larger dragon said, his voice cold. We are here to return the hatchling to his family. His family is the reason he almost died, Ben replied, keeping his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. They neglected him. They let him starve. That is not your determination to make. You have violated multiple protocols by removing a dragon child without parental consent and by seeking unauthorized medical treatment. I sought medical treatment because he was dying. The second dragon, a female with silver scales, looked past Ben to where Ash lay in the bed. The little hatchling was awake now, his eyes wide with fear. The hatchling will be returned to his birth parents immediately. You are hereby banned from the Dragon District. Your work permit is revoked. They moved toward the bed and Ash made a small, frightened sound. Something protective and fierce surged through Ben. He did not move. No, he said firmly. I will not let you take him back to a place where he suffers. You have no legal right to keep him. Step aside or we will move you by force. Ben stood his ground. Dr. Sarah moved to stand beside him, and then 2 other human medical staff joined them. It was a small act of defiance, but it was something. The silver-scaled dragon's eyes narrowed. This is unacceptable. You will all face consequences for this interference. In the end, they could not force the issue without causing a major incident. The dragons left, but their parting words were ominous. The Interspecies Council will hear about this. And the hatchling's parents are being notified immediately. When they were gone, Ben sat down beside Ash and took his claw again. I'm sorry, Ash. I tried to protect you. I know, Papa Ben. Ash's voice was weak but steady. Thank you for not letting them take me. I will always fight for you. Always. But Ben knew this was only the beginning. 2 days later, when Ash was well enough to leave the medical center, dragon officials came with a formal order. Ash was to be returned to his birth parents immediately, and all contact between Ben and the hatchling was permanently forbidden. Ben had no legal standing to refuse. With a breaking heart, he watched as they took Ash away. The little dragon looked back at him with devastated eyes, and Ben had to turn away before Ash could see him cry. The days that followed were the darkest Ben had experienced since losing his son. He could not eat. He could not sleep. He kept thinking about Ash alone in that cold lower chamber, confused and hurting, wondering why Papa Ben had not come to save him. Meanwhile, in the northern tower, Ash was confined to the family chambers as punishment for bringing shame to his parents. They had been furious when they learned about Ben's interference, not because they cared about Ash, but because a human had dared to question their parenting. You will stay here until you learn proper behavior, his father said coldly. And you will never speak to that human again. Ash said nothing. He just curled up in the corner of his old sleeping area, the place he had once escaped from. The place that held only bad memories. His thermal blanket had been taken away. His toys from Ben were gone. Everything that reminded him of kindness had been stripped away. Without Ben's daily visits, without proper food, without anyone who cared, Ash began to fade. He stopped eating the scraps his parents occasionally brought. He stopped practicing his wing exercises. He stopped talking. He just lay in his corner, staring at nothing, feeling the cold seep into his bones again. His siblings noticed but did not care. His parents noticed but called it appropriate humility. No one saw that Ash was dying inside, losing the will to keep fighting. Ben could not bear it. He spent 3 sleepless nights researching interspecies law, looking for any possible way to help Ash. And then he found it. A provision in the Interspecies Council Charter that allowed any sapient being to petition for custody of a child in cases of severe neglect or abuse. It had never been used by a human seeking to parent a dragon. Never. But the law did not specifically forbid it. Ben filed the petition the next morning. He documented everything. The state he had found Ash in, eating garbage and trading away his possessions. The medical reports from the Human Center showing severe malnourishment. Statements from Dr. Sarah and others who had witnessed Ash's condition. Photographs of how thin and weak the hatchling had been compared to healthy dragons his age. The petition hit the Interspecies Council like a bomb. Within hours, news spread throughout Drakenheim. A human maintenance worker was seeking custody of a dragon hatchling. Dragon society erupted in outrage. How dare a human, a lower-class worker no less, question how dragons raise their young? How dare he claim he could parent a dragon better than dragons could? Protests were organized. Dragon officials called for Ben's immediate deportation. Ash's parents hired the best lawyers money could buy and prepared to fight the petition with everything they had. But the law was clear. Ben had the right to a hearing before the Interspecies Council. And more importantly, Ash had the right to be heard. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Ben was not allowed to see Ash during that time, but he received one piece of information that shattered him. A social worker who had checked on Ash reported that the hatchling had stopped eating entirely. He was wasting away, unresponsive and withdrawn. Ben requested an emergency motion to have Ash evaluated by neutral medical professionals. The council granted it. When the doctors examined Ash, they found a hatchling in severe psychological distress, showing signs of depression and failure to thrive. The medical report gave Ben hope. It proved that Ash's condition had worsened dramatically after being separated from Ben. It showed that the birth parent's environment was actively harmful. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. The council chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate beings of all sizes. Ben sat at a small table, looking impossibly small compared to the dragons filling the gallery. Ash's parents sat across from him with their lawyers, radiating cold fury. The council members, representing multiple species, sat in a semicircle at the front. The head counselor, a dignified alien with blue skin and silver eyes, called the session to order. We are here to consider the petition of Ben Foster, human, for custody of the dragon hatchling designated as Ash. The birth parents contest this petition. We will hear testimony from all parties. Ash's parents spoke first. Their lawyer argued that they were raising Ash according to traditional dragon values. That toughness and self-reliance were important traits. That the runt of a clutch must prove himself worthy through struggle. They presented character witnesses from dragon society who supported their approach. The human has no understanding of dragon culture, the lawyer said smoothly. He sees neglect where we see proper development. A human cannot possibly raise a dragon child with the values and traditions necessary for success in dragon society. Then it was Ben's turn. He stood and spoke from the heart, his voice shaking with emotion but never wavering. I do not claim to understand all dragon traditions, but I do understand what a child needs. Safety, food, warmth, someone who sees them and values them. Ash had none of those things. He was eating garbage to survive. He traded away every possession he had just to get scraps of food. When I found him, he was so thin I could count his ribs. He did not know how to clean his scales. He had never been taught basic wing exercises. These are not cultural differences. This is neglect. The gallery erupted in angry muttering. The head counselor called for order. Ben continued. I have the medical reports, the photographs, the testimony of witnesses. But more than that, I have seen what happens when Ash receives proper care. He thrives. He learns. He laughs. He becomes the bright, wonderful child he was always meant to be. And what happens when you take that care away? The head counselor asked quietly. He stops eating. He withdraws. He gives up hope. Ben's voice broke. Please. I'm not asking to erase his dragon heritage. I'm asking for the chance to give him a childhood. To keep him safe. To help him grow into whoever he is meant to be. Ash's father stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. He is our hatchling. Our bloodline. No human has the right. Then why did you not feed him? Ben shot back, his patience finally snapping. Why did you leave him in a cold room alone? Why did you let him trade away his hatching gifts just to survive? If he is your hatchling, why did you treat him like he was worthless? The chamber fell silent. Even the birth parents had no immediate answer. The head counselor raised a hand. There is one more voice we must hear. Bring in the hatchling. The doors opened and Ash was led in by a neutral guardian. Ben's heart broke at the sight of him. In just 2 weeks, Ash had lost the progress they had made together. His scales were dull again. His wings dragged on the floor. He looked small and defeated and so very tired. But when Ash saw Ben, something flickered in his eyes. Oh, fragile and desperate, but there. The head counselor addressed Ash gently. "Young one, we need to ask you some questions. Do you understand why you are here?" Ash nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "They want to know where I should live." "That is right. Can you tell us, in your own words, what it was like living with your birth parents?" Ash was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his words were simple but devastating. "I was always cold. And always hungry. And always alone. They looked at me like I was broken. Like I was a mistake." "And what was it like when Ben helped you?" For the first time, Ash's voice grew stronger. "Papa Ben made me feel warm. He brought me food and taught me things. He smiled when he saw me. He said he was proud of me." Ash looked directly at Ben, tears sliding down his scaled cheeks. "He made me feel like I mattered. Like I was worth keeping." The head counselor leaned forward. "If you could choose, Ash, where would you want to live?" Ash did not hesitate. His voice rang clear through the silent chamber. "With Papa Ben. Please. I want to stay with Papa Ben." The council chamber remained silent for several heartbeats after Ash's declaration. The little dragon stood trembling in the center of the room, having just spoken the truth that everyone could hear in his voice. He wanted Ben. He wanted the human who had shown him kindness when his own kind had abandoned him. The head counselor looked at the other council members. They conferred quietly among themselves for what felt like an eternity. Ben gripped the edge of his table, barely breathing. Ash's parents sat rigid with anger and humiliation. The gallery buzzed with whispered conversations. Finally, the head counselor spoke. "The Interspecies Council has reviewed all testimony and evidence. While we acknowledge the cultural traditions of dragon child rearing, we cannot ignore clear evidence of severe neglect that threatened this hatchling's life and well-being." Ash's father started to protest, but the counselor raised a hand for silence. "Therefore, we grant provisional custody of the hatchling Ash to Ben Foster, human, for a period of 6 months. During this time, the situation will be monitored by council social workers. If at the end of 6 months the hatchling is thriving and wishes to remain with Ben Foster, permanent custody will be granted." The gallery exploded with noise. Dragons shouted in outrage. Some called it a disgrace. Others demanded the council reconsider. But Ben barely heard any of it. His eyes were locked on Ash, and Ash was looking back at him with an expression of desperate hope. "Can I go with him now?" Ash asked the counselor, his small voice cutting through the chaos. "Yes, young one. You can go with him now." Ash ran. He crossed the chamber floor as fast as his legs could carry him and threw himself into Ben's arms. Ben caught him and held him tight, burying his face in Ash's neck as relief and joy overwhelmed him. The little dragon was shaking with sobs, clinging to Ben like he might disappear. "I have got you," Ben whispered. "I have got you, Ash. You are safe now. I promise you are safe. Can we go home, Papa Ben? Please, can we go home?" "Yes. Let's go home." Ben carried Ash out of the council chamber while angry dragons shouted behind them. He did not care. Nothing they said mattered anymore. Ash was his son now, at least for the next 6 months, and Ben would spend every single day proving that this was the right decision. The home Ben brought Ash to was small. It was in the human district, in a modest apartment building designed for single workers. Ben's quarters consisted of a main living area, a small kitchen, a bathroom, and 1 bedroom. It was nothing compared to the massive crystalline towers where dragons lived. But Ben had spent the last 2 weeks preparing for this moment, hoping desperately that the council would rule in his favor. He had transformed his space into a home suitable for a young dragon. When he opened the door and carried Ash inside, the little dragon's eyes went wide. The apartment was warm, heated to the temperature dragon hatchlings needed. In one corner, Ben had set up a sleeping area with thick thermal blankets, soft pillows, and heating crystals positioned to create the perfect amount of warmth. The walls were painted in soft, calming colors. But most importantly, there were toys. A whole shelf of them. Glowstone building blocks, puzzle games, books with colorful pictures, soft stuffed animals, and even a new musical crystal that played gentle melodies. This is all for me?" Ash whispered. "Yes. This is your home now, Ash. Everything here is yours." Ben set Ash down gently, and the little dragon walked slowly through the space, touching things with careful claws as if he could not quite believe they were real. He picked up a stuffed animal shaped like a star and held it close. I do not have to trade anything for these? No, sweetheart. They are yours to keep, to play with. You never have to trade anything away again. Ash looked at Ben with eyes full of wonder and confusion. But what if I am bad? What if I do something wrong? Ben knelt down to Ash's level. Then we will talk about it and you will learn from it. That is what families do. But I will not take away your things or your food or your warmth. Those are not punishments, Ash. Those are basic needs that every child deserves. It took a while for Ash to truly absorb this. He explored every corner of the apartment, examining everything Ben had prepared. When he found the kitchen stocked with proper dragon hatchling food, his expression became troubled. This is a lot of food, Ash said quietly. Yes, because we need to eat regularly. But what if it runs out? Then I will buy more. That is what the food is for, Ash. For eating. But that night, when Ben prepared dinner for them both, he noticed Ash eating very slowly. The little dragon finished only half his portion, then carefully wrapped the rest in a napkin. Are you full? Ben asked gently. Yes. I am saving the rest for later. Ash, there will be more food tomorrow. And the day after that. You do not need to save it. But what if there is not? The fear in Ash's voice was heartbreaking. What if you forget? What if something happens? I should save some just in case. Ben understood then. Months of uncertainty had taught Ash that he could never count on the next meal. The instinct to hoard food was a survival mechanism that would not disappear overnight. All right, Ben said calmly. You can save it if that makes you feel safer. But I promise you, Ash, I will never forget to feed you. There will always be food in this home. Over the next few days, Ben discovered more habits born from trauma. Ash hid food in various places around the apartment. He hoarded the small blankets, stacking them in his sleeping corner even though he could not possibly use them all. He would wake up in the middle of the night to check that the door was still locked, afraid someone would come to take him away. Ben did not scold or try to force Ash to stop these behaviors. Instead, he remained patient and consistent. He made sure meals happened at the same time every day. He left notes on the kitchen counter showing what food was available. He reminded Ash gently every night that he was safe and that Ben would be there in the morning. Slowly, gradually, Ash began to heal. The first time Ash left food on his plate without trying to save it, Ben almost cried with relief. It meant Ash was beginning to trust that more would come. The first time Ash slept through the entire night without waking up afraid, Ben checked on him 3 times just to see the peaceful expression on his sleeping face. 2 weeks into their new life together, Ben came home from a meeting with the council social worker to find Ash playing with his building blocks. The little dragon had constructed an elaborate tower and was carefully balancing pieces on top. When he saw Ben, he jumped up excitedly. Papa Ben, look what I made. It is almost as tall as you. That is amazing, Ash. You are getting so good at building. Ash beamed with pride. Then his expression grew more serious. Papa Ben, the social worker lady who visited today, asked me lots of questions. I know. She asked me questions too. That is her job, to make sure you are happy and healthy. I told her I am very happy. I told her you make me breakfast every day and you read me stories at night and you help me practice flying. Ash paused, then added quietly, I told her I never want to leave. Ben sat down on the floor beside Ash. I never want you to leave either, sweetheart. These 6 months will go by, and then if you still want to stay, the council will make it permanent. You will be my son officially. What if they change their minds? What if they say humans cannot keep dragon children? Then I will fight for you again. And again. And as many times as it takes. Ben pulled Ash into a gentle hug. You are my family now, Ash. I am not letting anyone take you away from me. Ash was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then he asked the question that had clearly been weighing on his mind. Papa Ben, what if I grow up and I am still small? What if I never breathe big fire like other dragons? What if I am always the runt? Then you will be a small dragon who is loved exactly as you are. You do not need to be big or powerful to be valuable, Ash. You are valuable because you are you. Because you are kind and clever and brave. Because you try hard and you laugh at silly jokes and you build amazing towers. That is enough. You are enough. Tears rolled down Ash's scaled cheeks. No one ever said I was enough before. Well, I am saying it now. And I will keep saying it every day until you believe it. That night, as Ben tucked Ash into his sleeping corner, the little dragon held onto his hand and would not let go. Papa Ben? Yes, Ash? Can I ask you something important? Of course. You can ask me anything. Ash took a shaky breath. Can I keep you? Forever, I mean. Not just for 6 months. Can you be my papa forever? Ben felt his throat tighten with emotion. He squeezed Ash's claw gently. Yes, Ash. I am your papa forever. 6 months from now, 6 years from now, 60 years from now. I'm not going anywhere. You are stuck with me. Good, Ash whispered, a smile spreading across his face. Because you are stuck with me too. That is the best thing anyone has ever told me. Ash's eyes were already drooping with sleep, but he fought to stay awake a little longer. Papa Ben? I love you. It was the first time Ash had said those words. Ben had to blink back tears as he responded. I love you too, Ash. So very much. Now get some sleep, little flame. I will be right here if you need me. You promise? I promise. Ben stayed there, sitting beside Ash's sleeping corner, until the little dragon finally drifted off to sleep. Even then he remained for a while longer, watching Ash breathe slowly and peacefully, marveling at how much had changed in such a short time. A few months ago, Ash had been a forgotten hatchling eating garbage and trading away everything he owned just to survive. Now he was a child who knew he was loved, who had toys and warmth and stability, who could say, I love you, and believe it would be said back. Ben thought about his own son, the one he had lost 3 years ago. The grief would always be there, a quiet ache in his heart. But beside that grief was something new. Love for this brave little dragon who had chosen him. Pride in watching Ash grow stronger every day. Hope for the future they would build together. He reached out and gently stroked Ash's head, careful not to wake him. Thank you, Ben whispered to the sleeping hatchling. Thank you for letting me be your papa. Thank you for teaching me that my heart could grow around someone new without forgetting what came before. You saved me too, Ash. You saved me too. Outside, the 3 sons of Drakenheim were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Inside their small apartment, a human and a dragon rested together, a family formed not by biology but by choice, compassion, and love that refused to give up. And for the first time in a very long time, both of them slept peacefully, knowing they were exactly where they belonged. 6 months passed like a gentle dream. The scared, starving hatchling who had once eaten garbage to survive was gone, replaced by a healthy, confident young dragon who filled Ben's apartment with laughter and light. Ash had grown taller and stronger. His scales gleamed like polished silver. His wings, once weak and trembling, could now carry him in long, graceful glides through the practice rooms Ben had found for him. More importantly, Ash smiled now. He smiled easily and often, his golden eyes bright with happiness that came from deep within. He no longer hoarded food or checked the locks at night. He trusted that morning would come and that Papa Ben would still be there. When the 6-month evaluation arrived, the council social worker found a hatchling who was thriving in every measurable way. Ash had gained healthy weight. His development milestones were all being met. His psychological assessments showed a child who felt safe, loved, and secure. The recommendation was clear and unanimous. The Interspecies Council granted Ben permanent custody. Ash was officially his son. They celebrated that night with Ash's favorite meal and a special dessert Ben had learned to make. Ash ate 3 helpings, laughing at Ben's terrible jokes and telling stories about his day. When bedtime came, Ash hugged Ben tightly and whispered, "Thank you for being my papa. For real and forever. Thank you for being my son. For real and forever." But their journey was only beginning. Shortly after the permanent custody was granted, Ben enrolled Ash in a school for young dragons. It was a decision they had discussed carefully. Ash was nervous about being around other dragon children after the way his siblings had treated him, but he also wanted to learn and make friends. The first day of school was hard. Ash came home quiet and withdrawn. Ben sat with him and waited patiently until Ash was ready to talk. Some of the other hatchlings said mean things, Ash finally admitted. They said humans cannot raise dragons properly. They said I am not a real dragon anymore because I live with you. They said I should be ashamed. Ben felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. What do you think, Ash? Do you think those things are true? No, Ash said firmly. You are the best papa anyone could have. And I am still a dragon. Living with you does not change what I am. Exactly right. Those hatchlings are wrong and their words come from ignorance. But I know it still hurts to hear them. It does hurt. But I am not ashamed, Papa Ben. I am proud. Proud of you and proud of us. The bullying continued for several weeks. Some dragon parents had taught their children to look down on the human-raised runt. They whispered behind Ash's back and excluded him from games. But Ash had learned something important during his time with Ben. He had learned that his worth did not depend on what others thought of him. One day, a larger hatchling named Cinder confronted Ash during recess. Cinder was the same young dragon who had traded food for Ash's musical crystal months ago. "My father says your human papa is beneath us," Cinder announced loudly, making sure other students could hear. "He says no human should be allowed to keep a dragon. He says you are disgracing our whole species." Ash looked at Cinder steadily, not backing down despite being smaller. "My papa saved my life when my own kind left me to starve. He taught me everything I know. He loves me and cares for me every single day. What exactly is disgraceful about that? Dragons should be raised by dragons. It is tradition." "Tradition?" Ash's voice grew stronger. "You were one of the hatchlings I traded with, Cinder. You took my belongings in exchange for food scraps when I was desperate. You knew I was starving and you used it to get what you wanted. That is your precious tradition. My papa saw me suffering and helped me without asking for anything in return. So tell me which one sounds more honorable." The playground had gone quiet. Other hatchlings were watching now, some with shame on their faces. Cinder opened his mouth to respond but found he had no words. Ash continued, his voice ringing clear. "My papa is the best father anyone could ask for. He is kind and patient and strong. He fights for what is right even when it is hard. I am proud to be his son, and if anyone has a problem with that they can say it to my face. But I will not be ashamed of love." From that day forward, the bullying lessened. Some hatchlings even approached Ash to apologize. A few became his friends, drawn to his quiet confidence and unwavering loyalty. Ash was still different from the other students, still the only dragon with a human parent, but he wore that difference with pride now. Ben heard about the playground confrontation from Ash's teacher and felt his heart swell with pride. His little flame was finding his voice and standing up for their family. But Ben was not content to let Ash fight alone. The experience with Ash had opened his eyes to how many children across all species suffered from neglect and abuse hidden behind cultural traditions or family privacy. He began attending interspecies council meetings, speaking out about child welfare protections that applied equally to all species. At first he was dismissed. A human maintenance worker advocating for dragon children? It seemed presumptuous. But Ben was persistent. He collected data, gathered testimonies from medical professionals, and built alliances with council members from various species who shared his concerns. "Every child deserves basic standards of care," Ben argued at one meeting. "Food, shelter, safety, education, and love. These are not cultural preferences. These are fundamental rights. And any tradition that denies a child these things should be challenged." His words resonated. Slowly, support grew. Other parents who had witnessed neglect came forward with their own stories. Medical professionals presented evidence of widespread problems. The momentum built until the council could no longer ignore it. 8 months after gaining custody of Ash, Ben stood before the full interspecies council to present a comprehensive child protection proposal. His hands shook as he held his notes, but his voice was steady. "I am here because one small dragon hatchling was trading away his toys to survive, and no one in his society thought that was wrong enough to intervene. I am here because children across all our species suffer in silence while adults look away. I am here to ask you to be better. To do better. To create laws that protect the vulnerable regardless of who their parents are or what traditions they claim." The debate lasted for hours. Some council members argued it was governmental overreach into family matters. Others worried about cultural sensitivity. But eventually the voices calling for protection won out. The Interspecies Council passed the Child Welfare Protection Act by a vote of 8-3. The new law established minimum standards of care for all children, mandatory reporting of suspected abuse or neglect, regular welfare checks for at-risk families, and consequences for parents who failed to meet their children's basic needs. When the vote was announced, the council chamber erupted in applause. The head counselor, the same one who had granted Ben custody of Ash, smiled warmly. "This legislation will be known as Ash's Law," she announced. "Named for the young dragon whose suffering opened our eyes to problems we had ignored for too long." Ben could barely see through his tears. When he got home that evening, Ash was waiting eagerly to hear how the vote had gone. "We won, Ash. They passed the law." Ash threw himself into Ben's arms. "Really? They really did it? They really did. And they named it after you. Ash's Law. Because you were brave enough to speak your truth when it mattered most." "I was only brave because you taught me how to be," Ash said, his voice muffled against Ben's shoulder. "You showed me that speaking up for what is right is worth it even when it is scary. We taught each other, I think. You made me brave too." The anniversary of their official adoption arrived on a clear evening when all 3 suns aligned in the sky, creating a spectacular display of colors. Ben had taken the day off work, and they spent it together doing all of Ash's favorite things. They visited the flight practice center where Ash could soar freely. They ate at a small restaurant that served both human and dragon cuisine. They walked through a park and talked about everything and nothing. As evening approached, they returned home to their small apartment. Ben was making dinner when Ash appeared from his sleeping corner, holding something carefully in his claws. "Papa Ben, I made something for you. For our anniversary." He held out a crystal carving, beautifully detailed despite being made by young claws. It depicted two figures, one large and one small, standing side by side. The larger figure was clearly human, the smaller one clearly dragon. Their hands and claws were joined together. Ben took the carving with trembling hands, examining the intricate work. Ash had carved it himself, spending weeks on the project in secret. Light reflected through the crystal, making the figures seem to glow from within. "Ash, this is beautiful. This is the most wonderful gift anyone has ever given me. I wanted to make something that showed us," Ash explained. "Together. Because that is what we are. A family. It does not matter that you are human and I am dragon. It does not matter what anyone else thinks. We belong together." Ben pulled Ash into a tight hug, this precious child who had changed his entire life. "You are absolutely right. We belong together." They stood on the small balcony of their apartment, watching the three suns set in brilliant shades of orange, purple, and gold. The crystal carving sat on the table behind them, catching the fading light. "Papa Ben?" Ash said quietly. "Do you ever regret it? Taking me in, fighting the council, all the trouble it caused?" Ben looked down at his son, at the healthy young dragon who stood confident and proud, and smiled. "Not for a single second. You gave me back something I thought I had lost forever. You gave me hope. You gave me purpose. You gave me a family again." "You gave me everything," Ash replied simply. "You gave me life. Real life, not just surviving." They watched in comfortable silence as the suns dipped below the horizon. Somewhere in the city, other children were safer tonight because of Ash's law. Somewhere, families were being monitored and helped before tragedy struck. The ripples of their journey together were spreading outward, creating change neither of them could have imagined. "I love you, Papa Ben. I love you too, Ash. My brave, wonderful son." As darkness fell and stars began to appear in the sky, Ben thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a disposal unit in a cold lower chamber to this moment of perfect peace. From a neglected hatchling trading toys for survival to a confident young dragon who changed laws and challenged traditions. From a grieving father working alone to a parent filled with joy and purpose. Their family had not been formed by biology or tradition. It had been formed by choice, by compassion, by refusing to look away from suffering. It had been formed by love that transcended species and defied expectations. And as Ben stood there with his arm around Ash's shoulders, watching the stars emerge one by one, he knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where both of them were meant to be. Together. Always together. A family built not on what they were, but on who they chose to be for each other. The future stretched before them, full of possibility and promise. There would be challenges ahead. There would be those who still disapproved. But they would face it all together, this human father and dragon son, proving every day that love is what makes a family, and that hope can be restored even in the darkest places. As long as someone is willing to see the one who is hurting and refuse to look away. As long as someone is brave enough to say that every child deserves to be valued. As long as someone believes that change is possible, even when the whole world says it is not. Hope survives. Love grows. And families are made.